Welcome to the Hiring Our Heroes NBCUniversal Employer Spotlight. My name is Tim DeKreiger. I'm the Program Manager for the Corporate Fellowship Program in Atlanta, Georgia. I just have a couple of admin notes and then I'll jump right into the introductions for our panelists. All of our sessions are being recorded and are available at our website for your review after the program. And please put all of your questions into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And I'll sort through those and pose those to the panelists. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Jeff Wyke. He's the Chief Technical Officer of DreamWorks Animation with responsibility of all technological needs for animated film and TV production. Prior to DreamWorks, Jeff developed software for the Department of Defense and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. In the Army, Jeff served as a paratrooper and intelligence officer. Then we'll have Chris Escribano. She's a Senior Vice President of Marketing, Portfolio Creative Partnerships. She was named Senior Vice President of Integrated Marketing in 2016 and oversees the development and implementation of strategic cross-portfolio marketing initiatives for advertisers on NBCUniversal. Prior to NBCUniversal, she was with People Magazine, different roles there. Next, we have Brian Dorfler. He's the Senior Vice President for Human Resources at Peacock TV, which is NBC's new streaming service. He has responsibilities for all human resource aspects at Peacock. He spent almost 20 years in various human resources roles at NBC and CNBC. And he also is an Army veteran who served 4 years as intelligence officer in Europe. And with that, I'd like to kick it over to Jeff.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for the introduction, Tim. I think one of the things about DreamWorks Animation, again, it's I think one of those things that nobody's heard about, or maybe you have. So I think maybe the best way to start is we're going to show you a quick video that we made for our 25th anniversary of DreamWorks Animation, which is this year.
Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy.
You really need to see this.
Follow me, boy.
For 25 years, we've been dreamers, adventurers,
Who's with me? Here I come.
and heroes.
I'm in.
Cupcake?
You have been chosen. Are you ready? Skadoosh.
For the honor of Grayskull!
My hands are in the air like I just do not care. Ra-la-la.
Welcome to the Pride.
Well, hopefully some of that looked familiar. So where DreamWorks is. I've been at DreamWorks for 24 years, so this was like my life flashing before my eyes every time I watch this. So one of the things about DreamWorks I want to talk about, probably the most important thing, if you look at the next slide, is culture. DreamWorks is really it's its own community and it has its own culture, and we believe that teamwork and being connected to each other. I mean, art is collaborative, and creating great art requires great collaboration. So we do a lot to try to celebrate, to build that sense of community, to really it's about the people, and that's something that we encourage. Even in my own organization, we have our own culture committee, and we look at how can we engage with our fellow coworkers. Again, extremely challenging right now as we're all sort of scattered to the far winds, but we do a lot of these, still maintain a lot of these types of things that we do. We just had a virtual wrap party last Friday, which was a party we do at the end of any particular project. So we continue to do that. Next slide. The other part of it is education. We have our own education department at DreamWorks. We do a lot of classes, and those classes are open to anybody at DreamWorks. anything from life drawing to improv to technical classes about Unix file system, or anything you can think of. We offer classes, and one of the advantages we have is they're taught by some of the greatest artists in the world who are also DreamWorks employees. So that's really great, as well as bringing in lecturers and people from all over our industry and our larger company. So DreamWorks is divided really into two main business units. We have the feature animation, which is film, and then we have the TV animation, which is primarily for streaming these days, as well as any other type of place where you can distribute and view content. So I'll dive into each one of those in a little bit more detail. Go to the next slide. There we go. So we'll start with TV. TV is not really that old. It started in 2012. Funny story, on the feature side, we were going to make a movie called Peabody and Sherman that maybe some of you saw. And when we were looking at the rights to Peabody and Sherman, which is all part of that Rocky and Bullwinkle franchise, we saw there was a company called Classic Media that owned the rights to that, but they also owned a lot of other IP or intellectual property as well. For example, they owned Where's Waldo, or Felix the Cat, or She-Ra and He-Man. There's a lot of that content that existed out there, so we bought the company. And that gave us 450 different characters and intellectual property in which we could build upon and create new stories around. And that really was the launch of DreamWorks Television. And we've had a tremendous success in the number of awards and accolades that we've gotten. It's been really great. And we make shows for Netflix. We were the biggest supplier for Netflix in 2013. We signed a multi-year deal. And many of our shows are also the most popular shows on Netflix. We're also now creating content for, of course, Amazon and Hulu, and most important, Peacock. So how do we make it? I'm going to talk about pipelines a little bit. It's just to give you this really quick overview of that whole process. A pipeline is basically the flow of work through different departments in the creation of these films. You can think of a film or a TV show as an iterative refinement. You sort of have an idea, you pitch that idea and it gets sold, and then you start to write the episodes, define the characters, design the look, and then we create these things we call animatics, which is basically very rough animation, kind of a previs sort of, or prototype of that particular show or episode. And then on the TV side, we then send that work to another studio outside of our campus to complete that production part of it. And then there's a tight iteration between those outside studios and then the people at on DreamWorks Television on our campus in Los Angeles. And there's that feedback loop. So every night, the studios, and there's up to 12 to 15 different studios that are working on our content with us as our partners. They send what they did that day. We look at it, we make notes, we turn it around. So there's this constant daily back and forth delivery and feedback loop between that. On the feature side, we've done about 34 features since I've been at DreamWorks in our history. We do about 2 to 3 a year. This year we had Trolls World Tour, which was a terrific success, even though it was releasing a couple of weeks after the sort of national shutdown. But with premium video on demand, it's been very successsul. Croods 2, the sequel to the Croods movie, which was one of my favorites, is on track to be released in December. And next year we have the next installment of Boss Baby, Spirit Riding Free, which is there was a film, Spirit, Stallion and Cimarron, and from that became a DreamWorks Television show about Spirit, and then that TV show is prompting a film. So that's pretty cool. And then the other one with a title layer is Bad Guys. So we have 3 films that are coming out in 2021. Next slide. So the feature animation pipeline is a little bit, it's very similar to TV, except the box, the kind of gray box down below, That's all done on our studio campus in Los Angeles. So each one of these different departments requires a particular skill set, from the artist side on creating and adding to that story or asset. So if you think about something like modeling in the middle, modeling is creation of that 3D character that then has to be surfaced. You have to put color and texture on top of that surface, and then it has to be lit. So we have to have, we have a Monte Carlo ray tracer sort of photorealistic renderer, which generates the lighting and the look of that and does procedural growing of hair and different things like that. So there's all these different specialties which require, in many cases, a technical bent to it, but also very heavily an artistic side to that. That process takes about, it takes around 2 years to make an animated film, give or take 6 months. In development, story, and art, that might take additional 1, 2, 3 years in that, as we have different films that are in that process. And so that every 4 to 6 months, we're really starting a new film on the feature animation side. Next slide. This is what the real pipeline looks like. That was really nice and clean before, but it's actually very complicated as each one of these, there's redo from notes, from stories, work has to go back and forth. And all of that, those lines and all that to make everything sort of work with this many people, I'd say anywhere from 250 to 400 people, artists working on a film at any given time. With all of those films in production, plus the television shows, it all requires a lot of technology to sort out that spaghetti that you see connecting all those different departments. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about technology, since that's the organization that I run. And if we go to the next slide, you can see one of the groups. There's about 4 groups, major groups we want to talk about. This one is research and development. It's basically the software arm of our division. So in some cases, they modify third-party tools. They write a lot of our own applications. In some cases, they'll do simulations. There's a lot of physics work, a lot of math, but we also do, big data analytics. We do, we write code in C++, Python, Java. There's a really, if you're a technology or software developer, there's probably a place for you at DreamWorks. Next slide. A film takes, hundreds of terabytes of storage. It's about 500 million files that make up, all of the assets that go into creating a single film. It's a lot of data and it's a lot of compute. You think about the hundreds of millions of compute hours, requires really solid infrastructure. So storage, network, data center, cloud operations, service operations, AV, all this stuff has to be reviewed. In the theater and in these different specialty daily rooms, in many cases in stereo, visually stereo. So a lot of work, help desk. We have hardware to deploy. So just about any area of technology from that infrastructure and operations is needed at DreamWorks. Next. We have a group of folks we call them technical directors. There's actually a union position on a show. So these people are attached to a film and they work, and they'll go from film to film, but for the duration of a particular film, they'll work in that area in one of those departments, helping the artists in that department do their job. So a lot of what they do is remove the friction that happens to make artists a little bit more efficient, debug issues they may have, to really be that, if you want to call it, on-site or next to technical support. Where they see a problem, they'll go in and create a tool or a process that will eliminate that problem. Next. The advanced creative technology is really where a lot of the new technology that we're looking at goes into. So we're looking at augmented and virtual reality. We're looking at game engine technology for real-time feedback. We have virtual cameras with motion capture stage to really go in and explore how that's going to work. Not just to support our films, but also to generate content attractions. We've just wrapped on a theme park ride for Kung Fu Panda for the Beijing park at Universal. So there's from that team. So there's a lot of looking at new technology and looking at different ways to help monetize the intellectual property that DreamWorks creates. And you can see our intern there that we hired. So we do hire heroes. Next slide. So speaking of hiring, what are the positions that we hire for? Well, there's a lot. So just because you can't draw, like I can't draw, or if you're colorblind, like I am, doesn't mean you can't work at an animation studio. You know, we have, you know, it's a whole self-contained unit. So, you know, we do everything from certainly on the artistic side, but also on the artistic management side, as well as marketing, human resources, legal, business affairs. We talked about technology, training. There's just about anything that you can think of, we have a position for that. So how do you find those positions? Well, you can go, best place is go to dreamworksanimation.com/careers, and you can see the jobs that we're currently hiring for. We have a lot of open positions right now because the demand for content has never been higher, and the competition for that content, those people has never been harder. So we believe that with the culture and the investment in our people and the ability to really work alongside some of the most fantastic artists on the planet, that's a real advantage for us and an ability for us to go and hire people. And if you don't see a job post that you like, there's also at the bottom of the page, I believe, that you can click on, let me know of future opportunities, because as long as we can get your name in and what you're interested in, if an opportunity comes up, then we can contact you as well.
Should I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here to share with you a little bit about the coolest job that no one has ever heard of, including myself. And my name is Christine Escribano. I'm the Senior Vice President of Portfolio Creative Partnerships at the company. I've been with the company about 11 years. And prior to that in the industry for about 24, starting on the advertising agency side. So if you go to the next slide, what's interesting about my career journey, and often we tend to think it's a very linear process, it actually had many twists and turns and curves in the road. Some of it intentional, some of it serendipitous, but of the many paths that I thought I would take, integrated marketer certainly wasn't one of them. And so it's a position that really surprised me and really came to light throughout my career. It wasn't something that I intended to do. And I like to say I tripped into this a bit and actually discovered what I love to do. And I have an extraordinary opportunity to work for one of the most competitive, interesting, and exciting companies in the world today that has expanded and continues to expand globally. And it is literally, I like to liken it to the best playground you could ever be on, and maybe like Universal Parks might compare. But it's a very exciting industry, and something that often a lot of people don't know exists, and actually the diversity of careers that exist within it. So if you go to the next slide, one of the perceptions, of this is that, portfolio creative partnerships, I don't even know how to explain that in a simple way. When I was growing up, what we told our parents were that we were going to be a teacher or a doctor or a police officer or potentially go to the military. Those are things that we grew up understanding what they are. And truth be told, my mom still doesn't understand what I do. But if you go to the next slide, the best part about this is that, one of the big questions I always get asked is, what is ad sales? I have no idea what it is. And typically, if you go to the next slide, people tend to perceive it as used car salesmen, and this sort of wheeling and dealing style approach of selling, and always trying to make a deal. But that's actually the smallest part of what we do. If you go to the next slide, there's so many different areas in how we engage with the advertising community and fans worldwide. But ultimately, what our team is charged with doing is generating revenue that supports the programming and the amazing content that Jeff just shared with you across the Comcast NBCU portfolio by essentially leveraging our creative and data solutions. And this is some of the ways that I describe working. Sorry, my dog is actually trying to play with me right now. Of course, she would decide to wake up now, but ultimately architecting solutions that are very unique to each of our advertising partners that allows our marketers to benefit from the tremendous relationship we have with fans and all of the love we get around the content that we create. So if you go to the next slide. So if I had to boil it down to very simple terms, we help companies sell stuff, but I often like to say to my team that we actually help people keep food on the table and the lights on in their homes and communities thriving, because obviously these companies are built of people and they're built of families. And the more that we help our advertising partners succeed and tell their stories through the lens of our intellectual property, the more successful they will become. And ultimately that creates a thriving economy. So if you go to the next slide. Bella, sorry, just give me a second, please. So you guys could call that a pause for commercial break. I apologize. I hope you're laughing with me. This is one of the most incredibly challenging places to be virtually from home, but it also has a lot of great. Anyway, there's actually so many of us, and this number is significantly outdated. We have about 1,400 people in the NBCUniversal ad sales group, and it's comprised of multiple different areas that may surprise you or some that may sound familiar. We do have sales teams that are both client facing but also advertising agency facing. We have sales strategy. We have futurists that help us operationalize and strategize to evolve our company operations and approach to the marketplace, to really be thoughtful and consultative sellers and helping clients solve their business challenges. We also have commercial operations, which is a very technical side of our business and the way that we sort of serve advertising creative through our systems. And our ad ops team is extraordinary, especially as we go from just a pure linear world to this multi-platform universe of mobile and digital, social. We obviously have to orchestrate all of the serving of the ad creative through that lens. So it's a very interesting, technical focused area. We also have insights and data. It may surprise you that we actually have data scientists and researchers. They help us predict the market. They also help us measure ourselves against the client KPIs or key performance indicators. So we have an extraordinary group that has grown exponentially as data has come to the forefront of what we're doing and how we are ultimately working with our partners and Comcast and all of the data services that we have that helps advertisers serve up their creative in very highly contextual environments that really bring their brand to life in a very positive way. We also have our finance teams that help us create, long-term investment plans, as well as a legal and HR team. So we deal with legal through marketing all the time because we have to make sure that we are being very thoughtful about how we communicate to consumers and being transparent with those consumers. And obviously we also have a human resources department that obviously helps us evolve our organization for the technological advances that come our way. But what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about is really what I do in marketing, creative, and production. And that's really the lens that this presentation was built upon. So if you go to the next slide, I actually have a video to share with you that gives you a little sense about what we do. But what if I had to encapsulate what I do every day is that I'm ultimately a storyteller. And that's a lot of the exciting part that we get to bring together the art and science of what we do. It also gets us into the productions of our films as well as our TV shows and brings clients into that narrative. So I'd love to share a little bit about what we do through the next video. Oh, before that, sorry, apologies. Let me just start with level setting on what marketing is. And ultimately, I like to sort of boil it down to that marketing is the art of answering a need, which is a utility. So you need to brush your teeth. I sell toothpaste as a for instance, or creating a want, which is something like a desire. So I absolutely love coach purses. So that's a desire I'm creating, is not necessarily a functional thing. It's something that you desire to do, or a certain fashion, as an example. Integrated marketing is where we create a brand narrative around a need or a want. So let's say you're Samsung and you are providing a service to consumers as a way to access content, obviously plan their lives, take photos. They have all of this utility built into something, but they have to create the want of their brand versus Apple, let's say. And what we ultimately do is bring Samsung into our intellectual property to help tell their story. So if we go to the next slide.
You might call us maker, marketer, writer, dreamer, strategist, or designer. But these are just all the ways of saying the same thing. We transform stories. Your stories. Every great brand has a great story. We take those stories and we craft, amplify, and evolve them into something even greater. 92 years of storytelling has taught us that a good story entertains. It makes us react, laugh or cry, or shout out in surprise. While a great story transforms. It can take us apart and put us back together again, new. It opens eyes, it changes hearts. Every day in our studios, offices, edit rooms, and backlots, we combine the talent, the legacy, and the access of NBCU into stories that influence, convert, and transform. Viewers into customers, interest into intent, investment into return, entertainment into impact. NBCU, our story is telling your story to the people that matter to you.
So as I mentioned before, I truly get to play in an extraordinarily rich and robust playground of IP and networks across the lens of sports, news, entertainment, obviously with many of our digital partners, with Comcast, our local and O&O, as well as films and parks. I now also, what's missing from here is that we also just acquired Sky Media, that is now part of our proposition as well. So what you see here is a logo soup, but these obviously represents lots of different shows and talent, and that's what we consider our IP. And what we really serve to do is work together to sort of architect solutions for our clients based on business outcomes and the types of stories they want to tell. So I can give you for instance, if you're Samsung and you're launching a new S10 phone, we actually worked with Jimmy Fallon, The Today Show, our new Snap show, The Rundown, along with Telemundo and their version of The Voice, which is called La Voz, to actually architect a solution where we had the cameras replace the NBCU cameras of these different shows to unlock new stories. So in the example of the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon show, we actually shot an entire episode of Jimmy Fallon that was meant to be a repeat and actually created an entirely new episode that didn't exist before without this advertising partner. That's the type of storytelling that we do, and we obviously took that lens and even transformed it to La Voz on Telemundo, where one of the talent from that show, one of the coaches actually used that as a point of view from his chair, so that viewers on Instagram got to see exactly what his experience was, and he created a whole slew of new original content from that. So we really work with all of the different assets of the company in service to the audience, but ultimately to help generate revenue. We've also worked with Universal Pictures, and actually you'll be surprised to know, Jeff, actually just met with DreamWorks team today on the Crudes that's coming out in fourth quarter, and the way that we can bring third-party partners together with your team that would obviously serve to promote the film, but also help tell some news stories around family-oriented content for clients like a Target, for instance. So if you go to the next slide. And this is obviously the massive toys we get to play with. Obviously, this is being updated and has evolved since the COVID crisis, but ultimately, we work with some of the best IP out there, hands down. And many companies in the industry right now are seeking to merge, like ABC and Disney, and bring this type of proposition to market as well. Lucky for us, we had a very long tail view of this opportunity of orchestrating and choreographing our vast portfolio in such a meaningful way for our partners that we're about 8 years ahead. And I've been in this role for about 4 years. I actually started at the company and working on the Telemundo and at the time Mundo's properties. So this discipline of architecting these portfolio solutions is fairly new, and we've been doing this for the last 4 years to actually build the team and the discipline. But we see that this is the future of where we're going to be in storytelling. Brands actually coming to surface to help us unlock new stories, to maybe even be joint venture partners and, or executive producers, if you will, of some great content that exists, but some that doesn't exist. So we see them as the underwriters of our content dreams. If you go to the next slide. And, so to kind of midpoint, is this what I thought I would be doing in my life? Absolutely not. And there's a lot of skill sets that I had starting out in my life that were very transferable. And I know that this audience, obviously, some of this may be new to you, may be actually really interesting to you, but there's really amazing skills that aren't necessarily taught. A lot of them soft skills like leadership, problem solving, creative thinking, strategy, that all plays into everything that I do every day. Most of what my team is comprised of is really truly a puzzle of all different backgrounds, all different disciplines. The layers of diversity go from the obvious ones like racial diversity or ethnic diversity, religious diversity, but even more so regional diversity, diversity of careers. We really do generally try to build a puzzle with our team because we do need to speak to so many different types of consumers that no one single person knows everything or has the right answer. We actually bring it together through creating really extraordinary, unique, and interesting tension points that ultimately lead to the creative solutions. So if you go to the next slide. So, well, some of the things that I learned, along the way that I think are always very interesting is that, like, the career buckets, you're not always going to fill them throughout. And obviously, I looked at my career very much as an experiment, a series of calculated risks that changed my career about 3 times along the way of the last 24 years. But every single experience was really an opportunity to grow. And it was really about building taking the skills that I had developed in one place and building upon them at the next. I love being an entrepreneur. Working in a big company like this has allowed me to be really an entrepreneur, but with the sort of confines and the backing of a big corporation, which is honestly one of the best parts of my job. I'm a student every day. We look for people with inherent curiosity. And I actually, in our job descriptions, we write strong emotional quotient and strong curiosity quotient is actually more important than, let's say, an MBA. And I'm not discounting that an MBA is great in your life for your education, but it's not necessarily a requirement for this type of work. It's really, that only enhances your capability, but ultimately, if you are a person who can really lead people, collaborate with people, bring people together, work on a team, like that's a lot of what we're looking for. Obviously relationship building is critical here, understanding that and treating everyone equally. And that's something that I philosophically and personally really believe. I also believe in people who, if they see a problem, they solve it. That's a critical part of what we do every day. We are problem solving all the time and responding to culture. So my team works through the 4 C's, and I'm sorry I don't have that slide here for you, but ultimately we really study humanity, and psychology. So culture and consumer are really the core of what informs the solutions we create. And then we also really dive into the expertise and understanding the client, what makes them tick, what they're looking to do, their history, but also the overarching category, because each of these clients is trying to find their unique white space within a category, like technology or retail. So it's up to us to help them find it by really challenging them as consultative partners. So, and at the end of the day, the biggest part and the most amazing thing that has happened to me on this journey is that I found my true purpose. I can create any number of exciting ideas and programs, but ultimately, leadership is where I have leaned into purpose to find my purpose. And I was given that gift by someone who was considering my team, considering joining my team, and she told me that I had a reputation of breeding leaders. And I thought that was probably one of the most extraordinarily eye-opening insights of my life, where that really gave me a focal point for the next phase of my career, you know, and obviously in continuing effort to reinvent. That was something that was really, you know, exciting to me. And obviously leaders come in all shapes and sizes and all different backgrounds, and breeding leaders is really about empowering people, caring for people, helping them find their path, and giving them a platform for growth. If you go to the next slide. So hopefully I've given you some sparks and some inspiration, and I would love to share with you something else I'm really passionate about. If you go to the next slide, which is, you know, some of the things, what we offer in terms of postgraduate and early career. We also have, you know, mid-career opportunities as well as senior leadership positions, depending on what years of service you're coming from and what point you're coming into the workplace. But these are some of the areas. We have an associate's program that's a little bit more entry level. I'm very proud to say that through our BOLD program, which I'll talk about in a minute, we ultimately allocated 2 of those associate roles, which is essentially a year-long program where you spend 3 months in three different departments of ad sales, so you can learn the full cycle of what we do. 2 veterans, and we announced that last November on Veterans Day. So that's really exciting. And we're also working on a more senior level opportunity that we're calling residencies, and we'll be excited to share those in the future. We also have our ASR department that really helps us plan clients' media schedules, sales operations specialists, research, reporting, as well as marketing coordinators and specialists. These are a little bit more of the entry level, but we also have obviously a lot more senior positions like, you know, account managers, vice presidents, senior vice presidents of the different departments, strategists. So there's an extraordinary amount that, you know, our TA person will come on later and share where you can access all the career opportunities within NBCUniversal as well as the ad sales department. If you go to the next slide, I'll try to end quickly. This is one of the things that I would like to call my main passion and side hustle at the company, which is building a program to influence, inspire, and develop the next generation of ad sales leaders, ultimately focusing on diverse, high-performing talent at all levels, giving them an opportunity to lead. BOLD is an amazing initiative because it was actually built for our people, by our people. It's not necessarily a specific HR initiative or a D&I initiative. It was very much built on the need for our teams to have a growth plan, even outside, but also their desire to give back and mentor and volunteer. So these are some of the areas that we have developed over time, and I don't think I have enough time to go into them, but you know, I can do a whole specific presentation just on this, but BOLD Veterans is something we're very passionate about, and that's why I'm here today. Obviously, this is something that we're building out a long tail plan around. That includes a big Veterans Day initiative, as well as a college track where we're going to be doing virtual full day immersions into ad sales with some schools that have a high population of veteran colleagues and students. So this is just something that we're very excited. It's brand new, and we're building with an incredible advisory board of servicemen and women that, you know, we're learning from every day. So that's an exciting part of something new in ad sales that we offer that anyone of our team that wants to volunteer their time can be part of. This is, I would like to call the added value of becoming part of the ad sales team at NBC Universal. Go to the next slide. So, you know, just closing thoughts. I always like to say to my team, if you're in the right place, if you love Mondays as much as Fridays, and, you know, these are just some of my takeaways, which is treat everyone, every day as day one, be, you know, a lifelong student, you know, use your connections and relationships, understand some of it is serendipitous and some of it is intentional, and understand the balance of both. Obviously being fearless is critical, and I'm sure many of you in this audience can relate to that. Taking chances and risks are critical, and that really pays off to education. And obviously, if you fail, you get up, dust yourself off, and you go back and use that to fail forward. But ultimately, I have to say, every day I do have fun. I deal with the most amazing group of people, and I work for this wonderful company that really lets us find our place and make a mark. So thank you for the time today, and I would like to open it for any questions.
Hi, Chris. I am sorry. Your worst nightmare in a virtual environment occurred, where I lost video and everything else. But there was a question, and the question was, how do you recommend selling soft skills when applying for a job?
I mean, first, I think it's understanding what soft skills are and what soft skills would apply to that particular position that you're applying for. But ultimately, I think sharing examples of how you work collaboratively on a team. If you're asked a question about what project you're proud of, really speak to something that not only that you led, but that you really collaborated with other people to bring to life the way that you utilize those soft skills to get the end result of success. So I really would look to what are the soft, I would actually ask the interviewer, what are the soft skills or what are the major skills that you require for this position, and then try to find an example of the way that you used your soft skills to actually, you know, benefit a project, a revenue driving opportunity, or the way that you know, incited change of the organization.
All right, thank you for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Now the questions are rolling in. I'll take one more and then we'll go to the next panelist. What does the hiring process look like at NBC Universal? Days, weeks, months?
Well, right now, obviously, we're in a very difficult time. So it needs to be said that, you know, at this point, open positions are being held as we sort of evaluate financial circumstances. But we still do have great internships. We have great associate program opportunities. As I mentioned, we have the associates program specifically allocated for veterans, and we're going to be launching in 2021, you know, to a big veterans initiative for the mid-level, senior level. So we have a career site, and our talent acquisition team is on the line and can share later. There's a website that I'll put into the chat to share with you, where you can find more information about these programs. I also recommend you guys go on LinkedIn, you know, connect with me, and if there's areas of interest, I can certainly make connections for you. That's a lot of the ways when I do these types of programs, I make connections for people, and I'm happy to do so for anyone interested today.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brian.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Tim. And I just want to say, I thought Chris's presentation was great. I've actually heard stories about Chris's presentation, and that was the first time I've actually seen it. And I actually got a lot out of that myself. There's certainly some stuff that I see has happened in my career in terms of kind of serendipity of where I've ended up. So
minus the dog, right, Brian? Except for the dog.
Listen, it's definitely all happening these days, right? So I just want to thank you for hosting me. I want to thank Tim for having me here. So I'm Brian Dorfler. I head up human resources for Peacock. You may or may not have heard of Peacock. I've been with NBC Universal for 20 years, and or close to 20 years. And about a year ago, was asked to step away from the job that I was in to come help NBC Universal start up its streaming service. And that's what Peacock is. So we endeavored upon this early in 2019. And we are right now on sort of the cusp of launching. So let me tell you a little bit about Peacock, and then we can talk about the people in Peacock as well. If you go to the next slide. I don't know who's, there we go. So Peacock. So Peacock is NBCUniversal's streaming service. And we are officially launching nationally on July 15th in the US. We've already launched on April 15th, but only in Comcast markets. I think, as everybody knows, NBCUniversal is owned by Comcast, and we've launched in Comcast cable markets. But we'll be launching here in just shy of 15 days across the country. So what is Peacock? Well, it brings together, obviously, the best of NBCUniversal's content legacy, a lot of the stuff that you heard from Jeff as well. But we're hoping that we're going to differentiate ourselves. And I think, as everyone knows, I'm sure everyone on this call subscribes to some form of streaming services. It's an incredibly crowded market out there right now, with the likes of Netflix and Amazon and HBO Max and Hulu. So how is Peacock going to differentiate itself? Well, we're certainly going to differentiate ourselves on content. And if you go to the next slide, you know, we do have this amazing legacy that both Jeff and Chris talked about, of all the different brands of NBCUniversal and all the content that they bring to the table. And you just look at some of the things on here. When you think about, you know, Saturday Night Live, that has been around since 1975, and the amount of content that's there that we can bring into Peacock. And this is just the starting point. Beyond the legacy of NBCUniversal content, we're bringing in content from other places as well. In fact, just today, we announced that Peacock did a significant licensing agreement for a bunch of content from Viacom CBS, which includes shows from Showtime like Ray Donovan and The Affair and Everyone Hates Chris. So we're going to bring together content not just from NBCUniversal's sort of library, but from other companies as well. If you go to the next slide. So where we're going to differentiate ourselves, and what we hope we're going to differentiate ourselves is, you know, right now in the marketplace, you have two distinct kinds of streaming services. You have streaming services like HBO Max and Netflix or Amazon Prime that you pay a significant amount of money to subscribe to those services. And it's, in all fairness, it's very high quality content. And then you have services, say, like YouTube or Tubi or Pluto, that are free, but most people would argue are not high quality content. And our belief is that premium and free can coexist in the same place. If you go to the next slide. So the other way that we're going to differentiate ourselves is we're going to have a lot of the types of content that you might find in streaming services like Netflix or HBO Max. So you'll have your dramas and your comedies and your kids' content and your movies. But we know that, you know, viewing these days is much more than that. And viewing includes things like news, late night entertainment, live sports, Hispanic content, reality content, things that you might not be able to find on many of those services. And we're hoping that we can kind of bring together what I would say is the best of the streaming world and the best of the television world. So go to the next slide. So how are we going to sort of bring all that together? So when you see Peacock, and hopefully folks will go check out Peacock. If you're in a Comcast market, you can check it out now, or if you're not in a Comcast market, you'll be able to check it out on July 15th. We're going to have sort of three different aspects to Peacock. When you go into the product, you'll be able to see sort of a traditional browse function like you'd see in, again, Netflix and HBO Max, where you'll be able to sort of browse and search for content, TV shows, movies, dramas, kids content. On the far right of this slide, you'll see we're also going to have what are called channels, which are virtual channels. And these aren't TV channels that you might know today, but these are virtual channels that are lean back experiences where you don't have to search for anything and it just plays. So this would include, there will be a news channel. There is, one of my personal favorites is, there's a Saturday Night Live channel that just 24/7 plays classic clips of Saturday Night Live. There's an Office channel that plays clips from The Office. There's a crime channel that includes episodes of shows like Law and Order. There's a late night channel, there's a Fallon channel, there's a Seth Meyers channel. So brings you sort of that lean back experience of just being able to sit back and watch TV. And then in the middle, we're also going to have this trending aspect, which is going to be bringing you what's trending at the moment. So important news stories, funny clips from late night, sports highlights from the day, anything that is trending at that moment. So we're trying to bring together what we sort of call sort of timeless content. So you think about the treasure trove of NBCUniversal and DreamWorks content, as well as this timely aspect of making sure that our consumers are staying in touch with what is happening sort of at the moment. If you want to go to the next slide. And like I mentioned, like we do believe that premium and free can coexist. So our product will have different tiers, and there will be a free version of Peacock, and you'll be able to go in on July 15th and just start watching content at no cost. It is an advertising supported product, but I can tell you the advertising load will be very different than what you'd imagine in, for example, in a television show. In fact, last night I watched about an hour and 20-minute episode of a show on Peacock, and I think there may have been at most 5 minutes of advertising in the entire hour and 30 minutes. So you'll have access to a ton of content for free. You'll also be able to pay up for $4.99 a month for additional access for more content. And then we will have an advertising free tier at $9.99 a month. So we do believe in this idea that you can get great content for free, and we'll be offering that. And that's going to be our big launch on July 15th, is we want to make sure people know that they can get it without paying anything for it. And then the last slide is about our people. So, you know, as I mentioned, I came into Peacock about a year ago, and there was nobody. It didn't exist. And we've been able to assemble what I would say is an absolutely amazing team of people. We have about 1,000 employees across all parts of NBCUniversal, across Sky, which is another company owned by Comcast, and Comcast as well. And we have employees all over the country, as well as in Europe, in London and Lisbon. We have engineers working out of Portugal right now. And what we've done, I think, really well is we've brought together great talent from within NBCUniversal, and we've brought together talent from outside as well, some from the streaming and digital spaces and some from elsewhere as well. And like Jeff mentioned, you know, just like DreamWorks isn't just a bunch of people that can animate, it takes a lot of different kinds of people to make Peacock fly. And that's, you know, creatives, engineers, marketers, technical operators, data scientists and engineers, content people, ad sales people, product managers, HR people like myself, finance people. So it takes an entire team to make this successful. And when I think about the culture and what we've built so far, and what we're continuing to build, it's an incredibly collaborative team. I would say one of the things that makes us unique is that we are that we know we're late to the market from a streaming standpoint. There's a lot of services out there, so we're staying humble and we're staying hungry, and we know that we have a pretty big mountain to climb when you think about how pervasive something like Netflix is. But we sort of like being the underdog, and that kind of keeps us hungry. I would say the people across Peacock are incredibly collaborative. I would say we're very passionate about our customer. We're very passionate about the product and our content. Our employees love talking about our content. And it's a great team of people, and it's been a privilege so far for me to get to be a part of it. I know we're almost out of time, so I'll leave the last few minutes for questions.
Brian, thank you for that. I have a question. How can job seekers connect with and ensure they're competitive for opportunities with your company? Probably especially given the backgrounds where it doesn't seem like it's a direct correlation.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. When I came out of the service, I was an intelligence officer in the Army, and I didn't think I had a direct correlation. Now, I didn't enter directly into NBC Universal. I entered into General Electric, which at the time owned NBC, and then I transferred to NBC. But I would say I think there are, I mean, look, I mean, are we expecting people to come out of the service with experience in streaming video technology? No, I mean, unless that happens to exist in the service these days. I don't know. I left the service a long time ago, so maybe it does. But there are a lot of other skill sets that we do look for, and I know there are operations experts in the military. I know there are engineers in the military. I know there are finance people in the military. I know there are people that are analytical in the military. And you know, I would say one of the pieces of advice I would give folks is, you know, that I think has helped me along the way is be confident in the things you do bring to the table, and be humble about the things that you don't have in your toolkit yet. And but don't be ashamed of the experience that you do have, and it does bring a lot to the table. So, and I think there are lots of ways to draw that out through your resume, through the interview conversations. I think we have a number of veterans across across NBC Universal and places that I've worked, like General Electric, and I think we'd all be undercutting ourselves as veterans if we didn't think that there's skills that we bring to the table that might not be directly relevant to, you know, something like a streaming service.
Great, thank you for that. Let me check the Q&A. Let's see. Let's see. All right, some of these that are popping up we can probably handle offline. How has the COVID, what's a positive change to the business that COVID has kind of forced you to make?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as everyone can imagine, COVID has had a lot of negative effects on a company like NBC Universal. You know, from a positive aspect, I would say, I mean, first of all, if you had told me 12 months ago that an entire team of 1,000 people could work from home and effectively launch a streaming service, I would have never believed you. But we've done it, which is amazing. So I think on a positive aspect, very tactically, I think it's taught us new ways of working that will benefit us post-COVID. I think we'd all be fooling ourselves if we thought we're going to go back to work in the same way that we left. I think the other thing, and just thinking about Chris's dog, personally, I think this experience has taught us a lot of empathy. You know, there is something that is incredibly flattening about you know, working remotely. You see the challenges people have. I'm on conference calls with our CFO, and you know, her 2-year-old daughter is climbing all over her when we're trying to have a meeting, and it's very I think it builds a lot of empathy for each other, because I think we know everyone has their challenges. They may have parents they're taking care of, they may have children they're taking care of, they may have dogs that are barking in the background, and I think we've actually, in an ironic way, even though we have moved physically further apart, I think that we have grown closer as a team, because it's becoming a lot more personal, because you're you know, dialing into people's homes every day, and in many cases sort of seeing their lives happen around them. So I actually think that's a very positive thing that's come out of it.
All right, and let's see, I have one more question here. What would you say makes the NBC Universal, such a great employer?
I mean, to me, what's kept me here, and obviously I work in HR, so obviously I probably could be perceived as a salesperson for the company, but you know, what's kept me here, honestly, is the culture of the company. You know, we've had people leave NBC Universal and they've come back, and they've said the place that they went wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And when I think about the culture, if I talk about the culture, I would say, you know, there's a high degree of pride working here. We do a survey, an all-employee survey every year or so, and our score of pride in terms of I'm proud to work for NBC Universal ranks up in the high 90th percentile among other companies, which is great to hear. So I think people are very proud to work here. People like talking about working here. People want to go tell their friends they work at NBC Universal. I think the other thing about it is, you know, we're not perfect, but you know, there's a relatively, I would say people are very collaborative here. People get along, people are respectful. You know, I can't say in my 20 years it had always been that way, but I would say I can certainly say that since Comcast has owned us, I can say that is 100% truth. And you'll find people are supportive, people are willing to share their time, people are generous. And you just don't have to deal with, frankly, a lot of jerks here, which is, you know, if I'm getting up every day and coming to work, that's the kind of place that I want to work at. So I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And with that, I think our time has come to a close here. And I want to thank all of our panelists for your time and you know, all the effort you put into your presentations. And thank you for talking with everyone today. And for everyone else, please make sure that you check out our website at Hiring Our Heroes for the employer spotlights and other transition assistance.